Hey, thanks for clicking on or listening to, watching, wherever you're consuming this, another episode of the Reforge Roundtable, the weekly podcast where we break down all the latest and greatest gaming news. Every Friday, we go live on Reforge Gaming on YouTube at 2 p.m. Eastern, so if you're consuming this as a past broadcast or an audio-only episode, we would love to have you come join us for the conversation. Full roundtable back in full swing. Mike got his voice back. Glad to have you back. 30 and still gaming. Brian there in the middle, Ginger Prime. Always remember to check out these fine gentlemen's content. Mike does a podcast on Thursday nights. Ginger's doing all kind of things. He has 18 channels now, and he's constantly uploading.
22 kids and who knows, and counting. I don't know.
It's like that. It's like that old skit from In Living Color back in the day. I got 15 jobs, man. Here at the
I feel like you got 15 jobs.
Always has another channel.
Gotta hand in some pie somewhere. Yeah, absolutely.
That's right. And this week we've got some good topics for you. Gamescom is coming to an end, and there weren't any huge standouts, which Mike kind of has a subject on that. Game delays, games that just decided to kind of pull out of Gamescom. Is that concerning or worrisome for all the things that have gotten bumped to next year? Also seems to be a lot of games trying to still come out in 2022. And then Ginger would like to talk about the Dune MMO and maybe drop some hints about what's Amazon doing. They were rumored to buy EA. That's been debunked, but is it actually debunked? We don't know. We'll be breaking some of that down. And then I want to kick the show off with the discussion about exclusivity, because I had to cut my stream short a little bit yesterday. And they were kind of debating with me in the chat about the Phil Spencer commentary surrounding there'll be fewer and fewer console exclusives going forward. Basically, exclusivity will be a thing of the past, or way less prevalent in the future, where you need a particular piece of plastic to play a game. I got pushback on it.
You will from people who are still stuck in the 2000s. Like,
you don't say.
Oh, shocker! That people are like, no, my console is my identity. It's like, all right, buddy, come on over to the good side. Just play games, man.
Well, I want to kick things off with that, and then we'll move through the other topics. So if you're watching this, guys, if you're in the live audience, it's super helpful to smash the like button, because we are live on YouTube, and that is awesome when you do that. So 50 more likes will get us to a nice little start. A lot of you were with us this morning covering the PS5 price hike and covering the Indie Showcase. So we appreciate you still hanging with us and continuing to watch. So the thing that I got pushback on, and I'm curious what you guys think of his comments, I do think he was doing two things primarily, which number one is he's trying to grease the wheels for this acquisition. He wants to make it look like, listen, our goal is not to constrict the market. We're going to see less and less exclusives going forward. He also seemed to be talking about, multiplayer games and cross-play. And many people were saying you're still going to see a ton of single-player exclusives going forward. These people have Starfield in mind, Elder Scrolls 6. Then obviously if you look on the other side of the fence, you got properties like God of War and Spider-Man and Wolverine way out there on the horizon. And I actually said, I think the strategy at Microsoft is changing, and the Blizzard Activision deal is the catalyst for that change. And I even think there's a possibility we will see Starfield on the PlayStation 5 a year after launch, because the PlayStation 5 market saturation is so good, and they have an economy of spending. That platform buys games, and the Microsoft platform is all about Game Pass. We even saw a cool Samsung presentation during Gamescom where they were showing how you could play Game Pass right through your television on the cloud. Funny enough, they allowed, during an official broadcast on the Xbox channel, they showed them doing this, and they showed that it was compatible with an Xbox controller and a DualSense controller, which I thought was pretty big. So what do you guys think about this? Let's start with Mike. Mike, is Microsoft sort of starting the beginnings and the murmurings of a pretty big shift in strategy, since they're going to own so much property very soon? Or are a lot of these titles eventually going to be Microsoft only? Where do you see this landing?
When people say exclusive, Phil's not looking at just Xbox, right? Automatically, all the games, Starfield, Halo, they're PC and Xbox, right? So that knocks it out of the park right there already, that it's not exclusive. So even if Starfield is only for Xbox, it's on PC as well, right? Going forward, all that stuff is on 2 separate systems, PC and Xbox, and then you have multiple Xboxes where they get to play as well. Now, as far as PlayStation goes, yes, they are going to have their single-player exclusives that are going to go forward, but they are also on PC, right? They're starting the process of moving God of War and all of them to PC as well. So Phil's words saying that there's going to be less exclusives is true, right? Because those games are going to multiple consoles, if you want to count a PC as a console, but it's a system, right? So that right there, it's not false. It's not hyperbole. It's not. It's facts. That's what's going to happen. Lots of things are going to happen. And then look at Gamescom. There's hundreds and hundreds of games that are coming out, and those are all like indie games, Steam type games. They're all in the wheelhouse of Game Pass, and that is what Microsoft is pushing. They don't care about exclusives. They care about games that are on Game Pass, more things on Game Pass. They're selling a service. That's why they're going to television sets. That's why they're going to mobile phones, 3.5 billion devices. So Phil's saying that exclusives is going to be less and less. Of course they are, because for every one God of War that's exclusive, if it's only on PlayStation, there's literally hundreds of games coming out that are on Steam, that are on Xbox, they're on Game Pass. So yeah, that's what it means.
So before Ginger goes, do you think that he doesn't have PlayStation in mind at all, like with respect to all the property they're about to own? Like Call of Duty's kind of one of the big question marks, and they've kind of said, listen, Call of Duty's not going to go exclusive to the Xbox ecosystem because it wouldn't be profitable to no longer have it on PlayStation. But what do you think about the rest of the property? What about Diablo? What about World of Warcraft? What about Starfield, Elder Scrolls, anything else Bethesda kicks out, Fallout 5? Do you see those being on PlayStation?
Call of Duty, yes, obviously it's 30 million copies sold, and 3/4 of that's going to be on PlayStation, right? You know what I mean? So they're keeping that on PlayStation. As far as Phil said this in the past, individual games are going to be individually chosen to be on certain things, right? So for instance, let's just say World of Warcraft decides they're going to make a port and it's going to come to console. Do you really think that Xbox, especially if once the Activision deal goes through, that they want to give PlayStation, where they have Xbox Game Pass, and that would fit perfectly onto Xbox Game Pass, World of Warcraft, where you're paying a monthly subscription to play their MMO on their console, either on PC or on Xbox. So I think individually, I can see certain games going forward, like if let's just say Madden got picked up by Microsoft. They're not going to stop putting it on PlayStation, right? There's a multitude of fans that want to play it on PlayStation and Xbox and PC and whatnot. So that game would go on all platforms. But a game, I don't know, like Starfield might only sit on Xbox for a limited time. And then down the road, once they've sucked all the juices out of it, right? Where they get the main sales first, and it's on PC, it's on Xbox, people are getting Game Pass for it. Like you said, then maybe 9 months, 12 months down the road, they'll go, hey, you know what? Guess what? Starfield's coming to PlayStation. Then PlayStation's like, see? You know, I could see that happening. But I think it's an individual basis on each game that's coming out and based on what that type of game is.
Okay. What do you think, Ginger?
Well, I think obviously we've already entered into the era of timed exclusives. And essentially, I think that makes it's a fine business model, having that natural delay baked into it. But to limit a game to a piece of plastic is like 2000. It's like it is 2 generations ago thinking. And what I mean to say by that is that when we start actually looking more at the global economic scale, console wars only matter if you're in Japan and if you're in the United States and maybe Europe. But for the markets that are coming online, they aren't coming online with any nostalgia, built-in brand loyalty, any of this nonsense. They're all coming online mobile. And ultimately, when it comes down to it, it's all about, like, if you look at a mobile phone, all services, all devices, all games, like, they're all there. Like, you're not sitting here like, oh, I have an Android, I cannot play this one game. Like, that is not what billions of people, we're not talking about a small amount, like, oh, hey, we got, this, we're adding in this one small island in the middle of the Pacific now that they're coming online. Yeah, no, we're talking billions and billions of gamers, especially when you look at Japan and India. representing a massive market, emerging market coming online, obviously for the first time. And so they kind of missed out on all that. And when you factor that in, going to them and saying like, you have to own this piece of plastic is like, that is like shooting your sales in the foot, hardcore shooting yourself in the foot, whether it's a multiplayer game or even a single player franchise. And at the end of the day, you're seeing everybody kind of wake up to this. PlayStation came into this generation hard with this line of, we believe in console generations, we believe in exclusives. And then they're like, holy crap, we called it wrong. And they've been slowly making changes over this. And yes, they've got market share, and that's great. If you want a PlayStation, go buy a PlayStation. If you want an Xbox, go buy an Xbox. But those games all exist on a PC. So I think that actually gives gamers more power, more choice when it comes down to it. Like me buying a game on PlayStation, everybody wins. Like nobody's losing in that mindset. Same thing if I buy a game on Xbox or something. Like if games are coming out and players can choose where they play them, all the better, especially in the age of cross-play, cross-save, where, again, like if we were all became friends in the middle of this generation and you had a PlayStation and you had an Xbox and we can't play together, like that, you won't see that again. And any game that does that is a game that is destined to fail because we're just going to stick to where we can play. So that's what I think. Yeah. Like, will we see Starfield on PlayStation? We absolutely should. It's not a question of will we. We should demand that. Whether like I'm an Xbox guy. I don't have a PlayStation, but I want Halo on PlayStation. I think Halo on PlayStation benefits Halo, and that it benefits the people who are fans of that game. It's like, why are we sitting here shooting ourselves in the foot? I think Halo's decline, outside of like certain decisions itself, but also when you directly compare that to Call of Duty's everywhere, right? Like, why would we go and just have to go and segment ourselves to Halo versus Call of Duty? And it's interesting, they'll all be under the same owner now, is the perfect example of why you shouldn't sit here and say like this franchise is exclusive. If you want to delay it, all right. Like I'm not going to fault you for a time delay, because I guess you want to, you still want to sell the piece of plastic you're manufacturing. But why are people obsessed with Call of Duty? At one point it was Halo, but it became Call of Duty was everywhere. And that's the perfect, I think, example of what I'm trying to say.
Well, real quick on top of that, but Microsoft is trying to do with Game Pass, they're literally trying to get it on every single device possible. Mm-hmm. If they come out with a little dongle that it's like Google Chrome that you can plug in, or a Fire Stick that you can plug into any television,
yep, they
don't care if you're playing on PlayStation, if you own a PlayStation. They're trying to make it affordable, where let's say a dongle comes out, this and a controller for Microsoft, right? Mm-hmm. $100. Yeah. $100, and you get 3 months of Game Pass, right? They knock out the other console competition, right? This is why I've said for years, since 2008, 2017, when they started Game Pass, I said they're not even playing the same game anymore, right? They're out of the ballpark. They're Phil Spencer said, we're not worried about PlayStation. We're worried about Amazon. We're worried about Google. I've said in the past before. This is where they're positioning themselves. So when he says the plastic box, he doesn't want a box. He doesn't want anything. He wants, if it's, I know someone's going to say, well, cloud streaming is not powerful enough yet. Yet.
Not even yet. Like you in certain parts of this world, like it.
Sure. But 4 years ago, just 4 years ago, though, it didn't exist, right? And now look at it. And then exponentially it gets faster and better, right? And of course, if you're playing multiplayer first-person shooters, it's going to be boggy down and laggy. But if you're playing single-player games, that wheelhouse that Xbox wants to put with these independent games and stuff like that, it's that sweet spot right there for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you have to think, too, with cloud gaming, the people that something like that would appeal to, like if somebody's going to use their Samsung TV and install the Game Pass app and sign up brand new, or they buy a dongle, like you're saying, for like $100, I don't even know if the latency would bother them that much for the types of games they'd be playing. Obviously, if they're playing a quick twitch shooter or something, and they'd be in tune to it. But if they're getting it and they want to play, look at what Game Pass offers, 90% of the time, they're fun little indie titles. They almost feel like the type of games that a more casual gamer would be drawn to, maybe even... They're not mobile games in quality, but they have that feeling of, I can sit down and play this for a little bit, solve a couple puzzles, and put it away. So I do think that will play a significant part in that push that we all know Microsoft's going to do. They are pushing away from saying, buy this $300 to $500 piece of plastic. It's, no, it just install the app on your phone, install the app on your television.
Yep.
And this leads people to think that Microsoft's going to try to get Game Pass on the PlayStation and the Nintendo, and I just think that will never happen. Like Ginger saying, get Halo on PlayStation. I think there are certain things that will remain sacred. I don't see those barriers getting demolished for a handful of reasons. I don't know if we're ever going to live in a world where God of War's on the Xbox, or Halo's on the PlayStation, or Game Pass is on the PlayStation, because they all have their subscription services that they want to push, and it would be really weird to have the competitor subscription service like sitting right there on the same box where they're going to get way less money. They would get like a small slice of the royalty share on a Game Pass subscription. And that just, there are certain bridges that I don't think ever will be built, but I do think Phil Spencer's commentary tells me Microsoft is changing their strategy around this and thinking more of games as software, and you put software everywhere if you're a software seller.
Right.
Yeah,
and
well,
that's Microsoft at a core, right? Windows is always everywhere. That's where, when you compare it to Mac, which is hardware exclusive, there are benefits to that, right? Like from a technical perspective, but I see chat saying like it's not ideal, it isn't realistic, but it is. It's happening. It's already happened. It's continuing to happen. But beyond what's happening, I think gamers need to advocate for this. I think we need to be vocal about it, because Spider-Man on PC, is that better? Is that better for gamers? Yes. Is it better for Sony? Absolutely. Like I have not yet seen anybody able to convince me that Spider-Man on PC is detrimental to anybody.
Yeah, Spider-Man's the worst game because it's on PC now. Like, no, it's not. It's the same great game, but now more people can play it.
Right. And so it's that there is this mindset that is going to take time. And I think that's a lot of what I've heard Phil Spencer deal with and communicate. There is an education and a training, because there is a natural kickback. There are teams. There is a tribalism that is built into gaming naturally through how it evolved and crashed and was reborn as a toy and has evolved into kind of mainstream pieces, right? There's a lot of people have a lot maybe wrapped up, and then the internet will internet. But beyond that, it's like, no, I think that gaming should be everywhere for everyone, and people could play their services wherever. Imagine being subscribed to Netflix and not being able to watch it on your Samsung TV. You got to have an LG TV. Like that, if you tried that would be ridiculous. In fact, Netflix would end up being upset. I hope ultimately, when it comes down to it, we're talking leverage. Like, does Microsoft have leverage? Yes. Will they be able to use that leverage to get Xbox, to Game Pass on PlayStation? I don't know. That's going to be PlayStation's call. That's the right. They have the right to make that call, yes or no. But it would be a really great trade-off to say, hey, you want Game Pass over here? Let's have PlayStation Plus over here. Let's let you, as a gamer, decide if you want an Xbox controller or PlayStation controller. The console should just support them both. PC already does. And ultimately, I think I'm always just going to advocate for more gamer choice. Even if it's unrealistic gamer choice today, things change if we're vocal and also communicate with our wallets in that direction. If God of War came on Xbox, even if I wasn't intending to play it, I would purchase it because I believe in that future. And I think, again, especially when it comes to multiplayer games, when it comes to these games, especially games as a service, which is where Sony wants to go, you're buckling yourself down unnecessarily. Like, God, Sea of Thieves needs to come to PlayStation. I just think that gamers should have the absolute choice when it comes to where they want to play. If they want to play on PlayStation, great. If they want to play on Xbox, great. It shouldn't matter to me. Why would I defend that? No one's paying me to do that.
Before Mike goes, I want to push in on this because I want Ginger to reply to it. Some of the games you're citing, I would argue they turned out as well as they did because they were built for one platform, one ecosystem, and they needed to be excellent because they were going to be a first-party title, and then they later are getting kicked to PC. Do you think there would be a potential value degradation if out of the box they were making these games multi-platform instead of seeing it as integral to the identity of a platform and then later kicking it to other platforms. Do you understand the question that I'm asking? Like, do you see that being a problem?
Argument. I've heard that as an argument, and it's a decent argument in terms of that we made these games as showpieces to sell the console. But imagine those still being showpieces to sell your brand and your service. I don't believe there would actually be any detrimental, because that, I think, argument actually devalues the passion behind the people actually making the game. So if you said, do you think that, you know, having your game on multiple places is going to take the passion away from the devs making the game itself? No, absolutely not. Would it change how funding is structured? It's possible. That's why I still believe that the timed exclusive is going to be the way for single player games. For multiplayer games, you're screwing your game if you don't put it everywhere. Like, sure, it's not going to get the adoption that it needs, because that also assumes that people aren't competing, right? If we're going to play a multiplayer game and we can only play it on PlayStation, we will go back to whatever game we were playing before or whatever game already supports it. Multiverses is a great example of this. Crossplay, cross-save, wherever. Why would I go play Smash? I don't. The roster isn't strong enough for the convenience, and gamers highly value convenience. And if they think they do, if they think they don't, like, I'd ask you, why are you watching this on YouTube?
How much of a factor do you think Abe's question in chat plays a role? Because I was going to say this, creating a game for a single piece of hardware makes development easier, and I would wager a guess that actually helps with bandwidth, innovation, and creating a game.
Right, but then that brings us right back to the cloud. Like, bringing that streaming process to these devices means you're still creating it for one piece of hardware, and then you're just opting in. All Sony has to do to allow Game Pass on PlayStation is stop blocking it in the browser. Xbox allows for Stadia, GeForce Now, PlayStation Now in today, like right now. And yes, we're talking like cloud gaming probably still needs more, like more technology, more time. But again, let's jump 10 years in the future. Like, this argument in and of itself is like, you're only developing it for one piece of hardware. It's in the cloud. It's already handled. So it's not, I don't think there's going to be a technical issue, but we have seen technical problems with PC ports. We have like that. That is a reality that I do not want to sit here and say that, no, it's all smooth. You just hit, there's no right click export to Xbox button, so that does not how it works. But in terms of cloud gaming, that's essentially where that becomes the thing. You literally are building it for one, and hardware is agnostic, and you stream it and you call it a day. And if you want more of the premiere experience, imagine that though, right? Let's bring this all three, full circle. Would love to get y'all's thoughts on this. Okay, cloud is everywhere. You can play it, stream it on your Xbox, PlayStation, nobody cares. But you want the premium high fidelity, best experiences on PlayStation. And that's, I think, where you see that go. I think you see the limitations taken off of streaming, and then legitimately, like, you want that 240 frames a second, you want that PlayStation 6 experience for this game. Holy freaking crap. But then for the majority of gamers who are like, I can't afford the $600, $700, I'll just pay the $15 a month and play it, and have a 60 frames a second experience. Oh no,
Right. Well, they do that already with television sets, right? You're like, well, I gotta get this monitor because the frame rate's better, or the television set it's 8K, right? I mean, technically, that's what they do with the content now. You can get the 4K television, but for $2,000 more, you can get that 6K, right? Yeah. You know what I mean? So that's the way that the streaming does now. Even with Stadia, I know people don't play Stadia, and Stadia is still around, but Stadia, you pay for the higher fidelity of the premiere part.
Stadia, from a technological perspective, is the best experience for streaming. Yeah. They just struggle. Google,
terrible business model.
I have no idea what the F Google is thinking, and that transitions well into Amazon is on fire right now, like in a good way. Like, I don't think people really fully understand what Amazon's gearing up for, and I think it's gonna be really interesting to see if it ends up being a success.
Well, take us there, because I think that's enough on the Xbox exclusives in the future. Just kind of walk us into this room, this valley, this potential future with Amazon. You got the Dune MMO. Where we going, Ginger?
So for a while now, I have been continually questioning why in the heck is Amazon leaning so strong into MMORPGs. And to catch everybody up to speed, whether you think New World is a success or not, it's an incredible success. They are very happy with it. Ultimately, it's still, as with any MMO, needs plenty of work. It's, I continue to advocate, if you haven't played in a while, You're gonna freaking love it. Like it's only getting better, and we play every Friday nights. If you're looking for people to play with, that's my plug. But beyond New World, you have the Dune MMO. Now it's not associated with Amazon, but this is still an MMO conversation, because I think there's a reason why Amazon's leaning heavily into MMORPGs. To catch everybody up to speed, Dune MMO open world survival announced at Gamescom. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, whether it's going to be a good game or a bad game, we really don't know yet. It's going to be something that steps in and evolves. But I think it's an interesting franchise to connect into that survival-based MMORPG. So I think, when you look at like MMORPGs, one of the things that they benefit from is nostalgia. So having that's going to bring in people who are fans of Dune. They can come check it out. Beyond that, 1 second, guys. Beyond that, you still have the survival in the open world. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. So this is something, like, once I saw the trailer, I was like, it's on my wish list. I'm going to follow it. I hope that it's great. I always root for great MMOs, but in my opinion, MMOs are going to struggle in their initial, first 2 years at least, but that's just the way of it. But then you have another MMO that's got delayed to next year called Throne of Liberty. This is what you started out as, kind of a sequel to Lineage, but it has been upgraded and evolved. Rumors are Amazon's going to be publishing that one. You have Amazon working on a futuristic MMORPG. You have Amazon that was once working on the Lord of the Rings MMORPG until Tencent bought the developer they were partnered with on that one. They still technically, I guess, own the license, maybe. I know that we saw Embracer Group buy up some rights over the course of the last week, so maybe they don't or do. Either way, one of the two things. We know they've got New World. They're building their own. They've already got Lost Ark. They might be publishing the Throne of Liberty. My also current theory is that they might be publishing Blue Protocol once we start getting more information on that down the road. And so ultimately you start to see them collecting these MMORPGs. With the rumors of them purchasing EA, it just makes me go and start to lean in more and more that while we won't see a one subscription per MMO, I think they're really pushing into Prime Gaming to start setting it up to try and somewhat compete with Game Pass as a degree. So they have Prime Gaming. That's your free Twitch sub now. That's your free, different perks within certain games, etc. The free games, etc. They got Luma as their quote unquote cloud platform that's eventually, planning on competing with, the Stadia and with xCloud. But I think essentially they're building up their games as a service, like their Prime offering, as a way of trying to bolster an idea. Maybe they start charging for more. Maybe they continue to include it with just overall Amazon Prime. Do they try to build it out as its own independent, dedicated service? I think so. I think they are really on the warpath, on the move, and they're starting it in an interesting way with MMOs, which traditionally have been like a subscription per. But if they were sitting here saying like, hey, you get 10 MMOs with one Prime subscription, that's a hell of a deal. What do you guys think?
Go ahead, Lono. You've been quiet for a while.
Yeah, I definitely think Amazon's trying to aggressively get into this space because of how they've handled just the viewership, right? I think they understand that when there's a streaming element, they really want to funnel that viewership. I know they did it with New World, they did it with Lost Ark. Sadly, as a full-time YouTube streamer, that means I can't really touch their property for very long because they just suck all the relevancy out of the live room because they want everybody going over to Purple, which makes sense. I mean, Purple's not where they wanted it. It's never really been where they wanted it, so I get them trying to funnel viewership over there.
I would still argue that a part of that still is also responsibility of YouTube, because YouTube doesn't yet even offer anything like it. So it's not like those games only have those features on Twitch. It's like YouTube doesn't have those features at all. And if YouTube does add features like that, and then they still do it 100% with you. But right now it's like, well, no one else is doing it. Anyway,
YouTube did drops with Overwatch, but I 100% agree. YouTube's lack of aggression in the streaming space is incredibly irritating given the budget that they have. It's like Disney cranking out a really bad television show, Obi-Wan. Like, where's the writing? Where's the budget? Why did you hire such Bush League directors and screenwriters? You're Disney, right? I look at YouTube and Google and think the same thing. Like, what on earth are you guys doing? You're dragging your feet here. Let's get more aggressive. I don't know if Amazon's ever going to play nice with their competitor, though, and say, yeah, here you go, YouTube. Let's get some drops over there. You'll get, great viewership and ad revenue from it. I think they like funneling the viewership over to the Purple platform. The purple platform lives and dies on live viewership. This has been talked about by, analysts and experts up one side, down the other. Very over-monetized platform. So it makes sense that, Amazon has a vested interest in getting tons of eyeballs over there anytime that they can. Now, if I take that hat off and I don't think like a content creator and I think like a gamer, I would say Amazon's done an okay job so far. They've got some stinkers in the backlog. They're in the cemetery now, right? They're dead. But New World, all right. I'll argue they got somebody on base. I don't think they didn't get the home run. I think they got a batter on base. It's a good game. They got the absolute foundational basics right. Super pleasant game to be in. And it has the potential to slowly climb out of the water and be a good-sized MMO. I actually think there's potential there for New World. And then Lost Ark is kind of undeniable. Super popular game. Great player base numbers all the time. I'm sure they're making tons of money. That was a really, really grand slam. There were criticisms and complaints early on, but it's a Lost Ark. That thing's probably printing money for them. So I would say it's moving in the right direction. They went from launching games that are dead to launching a game that's okay to launching a very successful game. So the needle's moving in the right direction. So I don't know if this buying EA thing, though, is going to happen. It seems to be very quickly debunked, but now people are acting like it still has legs and still is a potential reality. Maybe somebody blew the load a little early, whoops, yeah, they're in talks, but there's no agreement yet. Because a lot of people have been waiting to see who's going to scoop up EA. It just seems to be like an assumed thing that somebody's buying EA at some point.
When they telegraph that they're like actively trying to be sold, and some, like contracts are starting to be drawn up and things kind of fell apart with like Comcast or something like that. I forgot who it was, but it was like, that was just weird. With that aspect, it's like that's a signal, and I don't know if I was like, man, is Microsoft going to get Activision and EA, or is Sony going to step in? But I was like, honestly, I think if Amazon wants to really step into the gaming space, they need to step in with a lot of nostalgia. And holy crap, imagine if they had Madden and all, like these franchises. Even the fact they're losing the FIFA brand, it's still like that would be, I think, that would be a real smart move from their perspective, because it doesn't sound like EA is all that expensive right now.
Yeah. Mike, what you want to weigh in on this one?
Yeah, I was thinking when Jenner was talking about all the MMOs that they're in the development or what they're doing, I'm just kind of thinking like, why are they going into that niche of MMOs? Because MMOs in the past, there was very few compared to what there is today, right? Now there's just a dime a dozen. There's so many MMOs that are out there. Ash of Creations is coming out later. Like, there's just so many new MMOs constantly coming. And then the ones that have been out for 8, 9, 10 years are constantly still developing and still growing. And I'm thinking maybe Amazon, if they want to make some moves, maybe they go for that niche market of MMOs, because like Lost Ark is very popular, New World is very popular. And you got to look at the overlap. Are the people that are, because if you play an MMO, you're no-lifing it, basically. You know what I mean? Like, you live in that world. And maybe that genre doesn't, MMOs in general don't intrigue some, but some like the lore in New World, some like the lore in Lost Ark, some like the lore in Lord of the Rings, right? So they're constantly making these different MMOs, and if they kind of combine it with Amazon Prime, or if they make an Amazon Prime gaming where you can pay a monthly fee and you have access like a Game Pass to all of their MMOs that you can find, they don't care which one you pick. Right. They just want you in there because they want you to pay for the microtransactions or the battle passes or the cosmetics, whatever they want. And they want to find that one. Captain in chat's like, why do I care about MMOs? You don't. But there might be one out there that all of a sudden they come out with the Transformers MMO and Amazon's got that. Or if they come out with a Lord of the Rings one, someone's like, I like Lord of the Rings. And they all of a sudden, I don't like Elder Scrolls Online, but I do like Lord of the Rings. And then someone jumps into that. So I can see them doing something along the lines of making 5, 6 different types of MMOs, not the same, but different genres.
You want different. Yeah, that's absolutely why their other MMO they're working on is like apparently a futuristic, sci-fi MMO. Whether that means, who knows what that means? Like, does that mean shooter? Does that mean, still fantasy, but set in the sci-fi kind of setting? I have no idea. We'll have to, it has remains to be seen, but.
Right. And then you look at New World, they're not charging a monthly fee for that.
No.
You pay for it once, and then you just, it's like, you're like, what? It's an MMO, and you don't have to pay a monthly fee,
Right.
that type of thing. And there's other MMOs changing that path. Like, you're still paying. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't pay for it on. I used to pay for Elder Scrolls Online when it was on Mac, and then when it came to console, I just bought it, and then I don't think they charge anymore for it, right? So now it's part of Game Pass, so now you're not charging for it at all. Now you get the extra bag slots, or you want to do the season passes or whatever they have. So that game model going forward, I see Amazon, just by information that you just gave us, I can see them moving in that kind of direction of, hey, well, we can't keep up with Xbox and PlayStation. We're the new kid on the block, so let's pick something that we can do, and then kind of get our way into there. And then if they do happen to buy an EA, I mean, that's all the sports games, basically. You know what I mean? That's the contract.
EA also has Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic as an MMO. EA also has Apex Legends, which is which battle royale. Like, and then all of a sudden you start to think about, like, what would that one, Prime Gaming
The
stuff,
Battlefield series, yeah.
All of a sudden it's like, does that opt in you into like battle passes and all the stuff for one low recurring cost? And then all of a sudden it becomes where it's like, why wouldn't you have this as its own standalone offering? Right now it's baked into Amazon Prime, and one of the two things they could do is they just either increase the price of Amazon Prime and cover all of that, and or offer it as a separate kind of function. But I like the way that you do that is with content. You have to have content, and content is king. Go ahead, man. But I thought Lono was raising his hand. It's like, all right, yeah.
I was adjusting my microphone. That'd be really funny if we did that. We have to hold your hand up to go next. I was typing in chat. I couldn't ignore the idea. Somebody said a Transformers MMO, and I was like, can you imagine, picking your class? Like, do you want to be air, land, or beast?
I've been talking about a Transformers game for like 4 years now, Lono.
It seems like a dunker, because it seems limitless with all the things you could add to your Transformer, and what kind do you want to build, and you'd get really, really far with one type and be like, well, now I want to start over and be a land beast Transformer instead of an air, mechanical or air vehicle Transformer. In any case, I actually, after playing New World, I remember saying I think the casual MMO will see a huge resurgence going forward, because the generation that played and cut our teeth on EverQuest and World of Warcraft, we're all a little bit too busy now to play the way that we played back then. I didn't, but I lost friends. I lost friends to EverQuest. 16 hours a day, and barely getting to school on time, and they obviously made fun of it in South Park. And I think that generation is now like, man, I'd love to play an MMO, but I got kids, and they got baseball, and I got work, and So I think the rise of the casual MMO will continue, because you could engage with New World very casually. And I think one of the reasons they suffered player deficit was twofold. I think they got hit from both ends of the spectrum. I think the end game wasn't fleshed out, so the hardcore people fizzled out. But I also think the PvP and the territory control shoved the casuals right out of the game. They're like, I don't like this. This is too, this controls too much of my experience. That's one of my concerns about Ashes of Creation.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the recipe, that if somebody can figure that out, how to, I hate to invoke the game, but I'm going to, how can we pull off what Destiny pulled off, where you have these weird, ravenous, hardcore people playing what amounts to a very casual game, a very accessible game. Destiny has nothing in it that is particularly hardcore, and yet it's treated extremely hardcore by a portion of its user base. But also, you have, very busy college students and moms and dads coming home and just casually playing that game, doing a couple bounties, doing a couple of this, and then shutting it off. How can you do that? If a giant MMO could pull that off, which I think New World could. Like, I remember that was one of the things I said about New World when I played it. I said, guys, I feel like they're appealing to both sides. That's huge. That's a big deal. That's the recipe. And if Amazon can figure that out, maybe apply what they learned from New World, that MMO would take over. It's one of the reasons I've said a Fortnite MMO would take over the dadgum world, because it's on every platform, super agile engine, and it would do that. It'd be very casual and fun, but you could really take it serious and go hardcore if they built it right.
Yeah, Fortnite MMO would be really interesting, because we were debating that just the other day with a comic historian on my podcast. talking about, is Fortnite an MMO? And it's like, by the definition, just massively multiplayer. Yeah, like, you know, like it absolutely is. But then if they imagine if they then brought in that other aspect to it as a mode, honestly, I'd absolutely have to try it out. I think that'd be kind of absolutely thrilling. But the it's going to be interesting to see how the next kind of 5 years play out, because we still don't have any kind of release window for Ashes of Creation, and already like there's two factions forming. Like, this is going to be bad versus this is going to save the genre, and we'll have to see who ultimately kind of wins. I think it's probably going to fall somewhere between the two, and I'm absolutely rooting for it. But we have some other really exciting stuff here on the horizon as well. I think, to answer your question, Lona, that you kind of proposed with like, how does that get with Destiny? I think it actually comes down to drop in and drop out multiplayer. Like right now, even with New World, one of its challenges is what server are you on? And then if you're on a populated server, you're having a premier experience. But if you're on a low pop server, like, that's an issue. And then you have to like kind of transfer and do all this. Like, if you were just like, I'm popping in, hey, my friends are on, hey, we're gonna do this, like that. As much as people argue for like the old school, you know, EverQuest slogfest grind, I think ultimately people just want that accessibility. And that kind of ties it right back to our first topic. I was like, people navigate to the easy, not that it has to be an easy game, it's an accessible game. It's something that you can jump into. And that's the same thing with me. Like, every time I sit down to play, like at night before I'm kind of, you know, going to bed, I grab my Steam Deck. You know what I play? I play Multiverses because it's easy to get in. Would I play 14 on it? Yeah, I would, but I have to go get my key fob. I got to do all this. It's like, it ends up being like, oh man, do I really want, like, no. I just want to play for a little bit. And I could, yes, go remove my key fob from my account, but like, there's things I'm like, I shouldn't have to do that. I should only be asked for my key fob password if I'm trying to delete my character or something. Like, just let me in. Like, I'm already authenticated on the platform. Let's go. So the less questions, and this is something that I think tech industries and all this stuff has had, the less times you have to ask somebody to do something, the easier it becomes. That's how these mobile games have exploded with such monetary practices, is that they figured out a way to make it to where it's like, yeah, like you already got your credit card in. We'll stop asking you are you sure you want to make this purchase? We're going to remove every little barrier that we can. And gamers are going to flock that way because we're busy. You know, maybe you got kids, maybe you got lives, you got all kinds of stuff going on. And yeah, sometimes you just want to sit down and play. And I did this one-handed. Like, I was so frustrated because I sat down to play Forza and it had like a 45-minute update. And I was like, well, I'm not playing Forza. You know, like, I only had 15 minutes. I was like, I'm just going to jump in, do a race, have some fun. And I was like, oh, I guess I'm not doing that now. And then, you know, it's gotten easier on an Xbox Series X, but still, I was like, yeah, stop getting in my way. Like, whatever makes it easy for me to enjoy these games.
Mike, do you have any more thoughts on that before we move to your subject for the day?
No, I'm all good with that one.
Well, I want to hear about this because we were running a story on this week. You know, why all of a sudden was Redfall and Starfield pulling out of Gamescom, and I was told it was an accident. I don't know how you write on your own official forum 3 or 2 different times accidentally, but they did, and then they just were literally not there at all. And then there's also the delays, and there's more and more games coming out saying, hey, by the way, we're getting kicked next year. Hogwarts even did that recently. So what do you got for us, Mike?
So the conversation I want to have, and I know a lot of people get up antsy about this and stuff, but if you come to my podcast and stuff, I talk about this all the time, about games being delayed, and then people praise them for instance, like Halo, right? Halo was delayed. It was supposed to be a year ago. It got delayed. It came out and it's still broken and buggy, glitches. It's a mess, right? The diehards will be like, nah, it's a great game, and that's not the conversation, right? Marvel's Avengers, right? I played Marvel's Avengers. It was supposed to come out in May of 2020, and then it got pushed to September, and then it came out, and then when it came out, it was broken, buggy, and incomplete, and stuff. And that's another game. And then there's game after game, Cyberpunk. You can just keep going on and on and on about this. And the debate I want to have, or the talk I want to have, is about delays themselves. Is Starfield, right? We just saw Starfield in June, and someone says that there's nothing new to show. How do you not have anything new to show of a game that's been worked on for 7 years, and you showed a 4-minute clip of stuff that you don't have anything else, of 1,000 planets, of all the solar systems and stuff that you're making in this game? You have nothing new to show, the skills, the story, anything. And yet Gamescom is one of the bigger shows out there that you want to advertise your game to say, hey, look, get psyched up. Now, this game was supposed to come out November 11th. It was supposed to come out 11/11. Okay. And yet they don't show up to this thing. Yet they bring a giant robot that they put in the Gamescom, right? But they're not going to show anything there. And it's just kind of weird that you're going to put a booth and set up stuff and then not show anything. And this gets me thinking like there's going to be a problem. And of course, the Xbox fans and stuff. I'm not an Xbox fan. I'm a gamer, right? I'll play games wherever I want, when I want. If I want to buy it, I buy it and I play it on the system I want to play. So I'm not picking sides here. I'm choosing against the industry of how they're delaying games. So they have things that come out and they just look off, right? When we saw the trailer for Starfield, we're like, that looks kind of rough. That gameplay looks a little rough. The shooting looks a little rough, right? Then you hear reports that they're having problems. Everyone's like, nah, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Then they don't show up, and now we're pushed into the next year. Like, so let's say it comes out. Let's say it comes out in March, okay? What is it for you, Lono, and for you, Ginger, that if the game comes out broken, buggy, like, are you just putting your hands up and going, no big deal, I'm okay with it? Or you're like, you know what? I'm kind of tired of this, where games get pushed back and delayed, and I get they can get delayed, and I'm okay with delays as long as your game comes out and it's finished, right? But then they get delayed, and they get pushed, and then they get pushed maybe one more time, and then they come out 6 months, 8 months, 12 months later, Saints Row, that's another story, coming out. It needs another 6 to 8 to 12 months of fixes to get that game where it should have been when it launched, right? And you could just name a game, and it's a AAA game. It comes out and they're just broken, buggy, and unfinished, and we're like, I'm glad it's delayed. And then when it comes out being delayed, all of a sudden it's not finished. It's still not.
Cyberpunk is is also a really great example.
Right, Battlefield 2042 is another one.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like, obviously people come back to the like, hey, a delayed game, is better, but like a rush game is going to be awful forever. That doesn't take into account the age of the internet and how gamers act. So, like, I see a lot, especially in terms of games as a service. So, like, in a single player game, I absolutely 100% agree with you. Like, it's so frustrating. It annoys me greatly. It's AAA, like, a bug here and there. Okay, like that's not a problem, but like just unplayable, like right. That is. I think that's ultimately where they're like, we got to cut our losses. Like, there's just no saving this or something like that. HR, like, hey, the team, they quit, and like the programmers left, and now we're like, what's it going to take to get this finished? And then it ends up being something like that. But in a single player, but in a games as a service online kind of game, I get that gamers will tell me they're fatigued. I get that gamers will say they're frustrated. I'll get that gamers will say like they swear off of it. But that's just words. And when you look at the data, when you look at those gamers, and when I like
actions,
the actions that, like, why would the industry change when we ourselves as gamers, like individually, like somebody's like, I've never gone and played another games as a service game. Tip of you rare unicorn, because actions in terms of it are communicating the exact opposite thing. So is there a point where gamer frustrations tilt over and then their actions actually reflect the frustrations they vent online? Maybe, but I think we're so that future is a far off fantasy at this point, just based off of how I see people perceive it. No matter how many times people tell me 14 sucks or Destiny sucks or whatever insert game as a service game sucks, it's like new expansion gets announced. They might have had a rough start, right. Or right. It's like, oh, cool. Like, I'm gonna come check that out now. Even with the Lightfall, them not taking out the previous expansions anymore. Like, people would come in and be like, oh, wait, now that was the thing that I was annoyed by. Now I'm gonna come back, and now I'm considering coming back and check it out. Even 2 weeks ago, they were like, I'll never play this game again, and now they're like, I'm back. Like, you're so when it comes down it comes down to it, it's like, I love you as a human being, but like, at least let's try to call a spade every which way, and just acknowledge that our actions communicate to them that we're fine with this kind of setup. Despite if we vent online, we show them with our money. And same thing with my frustrations with Nintendo. Nintendo sucks so bad, but I keep giving them money. So it's like, who's really to blame?
I do an analogy all the time. I did it for Destiny for years. I said that Destiny, because of the name, I said is my hot stripper ex-girlfriend, right? Like no matter what happens and what she does, you forgive her because she looks so good, right? And it just plays really well. It brings you back in. So if she's a psycho or he's a psycho, whatever stripper you like out there, right? Right. If they have dad issues or mom issues, right? All of a sudden you forget about it because they're like, "Hey baby, what's going on?" You're like, "Oh man, I missed you." And you come right back to it. You come right back to that game no matter what problems are with the game or what to do. Like I'm not angry at individual developers, right? I'm angry. And I'm angry at the industry itself, the way it is. But the way you just spoke, maybe I shouldn't be angry at the industry. I should be angry at you and everyone else because you're making the industry the way it is because they know they can get away with murder. They can release a broken, buggy game and still make that money without finishing a product, right?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's changing a little bit. I don't know if this is as true as maybe it once was because Cyberpunk did not do good things for CD Projekt Red. The share value that they lost
destroyed their goodwill.
Yeah. Well, and they lost tons of money with respect to their publicly traded share values just plummeted. So I don't know what Battlefield 2042 did and how much it lost. However, I just wonder if this has gotten to a scale to where there's too much money involved to have a really, really crappy bad launch. And to be like, oh, well, we made a bunch of sales in the first week. So I'm not as fearful of that, I don't think, anymore. I think I'm fearful of the opposite thing. I'm fearful of the industry is sort of shifted into... Gamers almost have an axiom now of gaming is my favorite hobby and I hate it. It's very bizarre. If you interact with gamers on the internet, it is both their favorite hobby and the thing they love to do, and they seemingly also hate it very, very much and don't want to spend any money. That seems to also be I was sort of ranting about this the other day with this, I think, completely joke of a lawsuit against Sony in the UK, claiming that they're overcharging customers and we're in this hard economic time right now and with inflation. And I kind of said, well, isn't it miraculous that out of all of the complete luxury digital items of entertainment we can enjoy, the one item that seems impervious and immune to inflation is gaming. Gaming is now more affordable than it ever has been. When we were buying cartridges in the 90s for $50 to $70, we were dropping basically, according to today's standards, that was about $100 to $120 per game. And so with every passing year that game stays in the $60 to $70 range, we're actually spending less than we did in the past. The games are getting bigger, longer. They last way longer. Play Breath of the Wild and then go play Legend of Zelda Link to the Past, which I guess you can now do through Nintendo Online. I think they just added that one. See the difference in size and substance and the fact that Link to the Past basically cost $100 to $120 of today's money, and you can buy Breath of the Wild for half that. And it's interesting that's like, I'm more fearful of that we're getting to a point where gaming is becoming this like hotbed of, it's almost like an us versus them, us versus the developers, us versus the publishers. And I just don't want a lot of these devs and publishers to look at the mobile market and say, let's just go over there. Like, we can make way more money over there. The fact that we still get AAA games and stuff like that, I think is a miracle based off of just like how the mobile market prints money and also is less risk and less cost for making those games. So it's like, I think that just is a passion-driven answer to the fact that we still get these kind of big games. But yeah, it's just not to say that it's not a struggle. Ultimately, I think it's still, for me, my view, I'd love to know y'all's thoughts, is that over the course of a year, like in a given year, it feels like we usually get like a couple of really good gems, a couple of that wasn't bad, and then a lot of and a handful of stinkers. Like, I think even back to my childhood, it's like, I don't feel like there's ever been like a year that it's like every month there was just like this insane, like this mind-blowing AAA 10 out of 10 experience. But I mean, maybe I'm misremembering. What do you guys think? Are there do you feel like there's more worse games, or because like I feel like we do get more games, but I think from a ratio, I just see it as like, yeah, we get a handful of really great ones, and then the rest of them are, like, that's why we have a rating scale,
Well, I don't think we get less or more crappy games. I think we get about the exact same. I think there's a percentage of games that come out because I remember as a kid playing a lot of Nintendo games that were just awful. Awful games. But I didn't know they were awful until I was older and then went back and played those games. When I was a kid and played those games, you didn't look at it and go, it was awful, unless you played E.T. or like, you knew that game was bad. You're like, yeah, it's a bad game, right? But there's a lot of games that you played on the Nintendo or the Sega Genesis or the Neo Geo, and you were like, man, these are great games back then. But then you look at them and go, man, that was a really bad game. Now you look at it, and I think we're more, because I like having an 8-year-old, right? Because I play a game, and I try to keep my internal thoughts to myself if I like a game or don't like a game, because I don't want to skew him on what he is going to like or not like, right? And I see it through the eyes of him. Even going to Disney World, seeing the eyes through an 8-year-old is completely different than seeing it through myself. So when I get angry at a game and I look at it, I give it to my son and I let him start playing it. And I'm like, what do you think of it? And he starts playing and he's like, I like it. It does this. And I start to look at it through his point of view and go, okay, so maybe I'm being too overcritical. But then there's games that are AAA, like the Cyberpunks, like the Starfield that's coming out, where they predict it or market it to you like it's the next greatest God-given game, like a Grand Theft Auto 5, and then it comes out and it just falls flat on your face. And then I'm being too hard on it because of what they promise, you know what I mean? And it's just a bad game. There's bad games, but I think there's more bad games in the past because there's literally games you couldn't even beat because they didn't even finish the game, right? There's a great YouTube channel if you guys never heard the Angry Gamer, or Angry Nerd, it's the Angry Gamer. He goes over some of the old games in history, and you're just like, really? There was no ending to that game? Yeah, there's no ending to that game because they just made it super hard, so you would never pass that board. Because if you pass that board, there was no other part of the game, right? So I don't think they're making games like that now because every game I've played, I've beaten. I've seen the credits roll. You know what I mean? So I think there's more broken games in the past. I just think they're more prevalent now because Twitter and Facebook and YouTube, and there's so many eyeballs on it, where back in the day, you didn't know a game was broke because you had to wait for Nintendo Power to come out to tell you if the game was bad or good or whatnot. So,
yeah, I feel like I rented a lot of really bad Super Nintendo games and Nintendo 64 games, and I felt like the good ones were really spread out. The really good games, the bangers, the one that we all look back and we remember. I think we remember between 5 and 10 really good titles per Nintendo, like per console. Right. The regular, the Super, and the 64. We probably remember between 5 and 10 really amazing ones. And even the best of the best, they don't have the substance and the size of what we get today. I mean, it's just absurd. I mean, because I remember somebody saying, well, you can't really compare The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and Link to the Past. I'm like, okay, well, compare it to Ocarina of Time or Majora's Mask. Like, they pale in comparison. They're a fraction of the game we get today. And, people in chat saying, oh, AAA is going into the toilet. I don't know. It feels 50-50 to me. I think there's AAA games that are coming out that blow the hair off my head, and then there are AAA games that come out, and I'm like, what the frick did you guys do? How did this even happen? Yeah. It feels very much split down the middle, which it's easy to focus on the negative ones, especially if you aren't getting to enjoy, the ones that are good. Maybe you can't play them, or maybe you don't like them. They're not your cup of tea, if the latest ones that have been coming out that don't really scratch that itch.
Well, a lot of the AAA games that come out, I look at it from a movie perspective. Like blockbuster games, AAA games are like blockbuster movies. And if a studio like MGM came out with 10 movies a year, one movie is going to be a blockbuster. 2 movies are going to break just a little bit more money than they used, and then 7 movies are going to be complete and utter wastes of money, right? But the 3 movies that made profit make up for all the other 7 movies that they released that didn't make money, right? For instance, Sony made a crap ton of money with Spider-Man, but the other Sony movies that came out were bad, like Morbius, right? There's a counter one to everyone. So with video games at AAA like EA, when they have 10 games coming out, they might have a couple stinkers in there, but then you might get that one from Jedi Fallen Order, right? When it comes out and you're like, oh, that's a great game, right? That's a good game. That's a good game. But then you look at Battlefield 2042 and you're like, that's a crappy game. That's a really bad game. And I think we're more vocal now because when we were kids, you didn't spend $60, $70 on those games. Your parents did, right? So you weren't really vocal because you didn't really know what money value was compared to the actual thing. You just know your time was wasted if it was a bad game. Now you're an adult, or a young adult, and you're spending your hard-earned money on games, and they come out broken, buggy, and you're like, "What the hell, man?" And it starts to chop you down a little bit. You know what I mean? For each of the games you buy. Hence why Game Pass is so accessible now.
It's also a lot more memorable when a big title comes out and is terrible. Like, we were watching all the Gamescom stuff this week, and I mean, these are all the indie titles that I wrote down. Like, it's a whole page, and I thought I might have even missed some, right? And people are like, well, where were all the big AAAs? It's like, well, there's only so many that are going to come out in a given year, and obviously they can't constantly be talking about them. There's a marketing strategy and not saying something every dadgum week about God of War or Starfield or Hogwarts. Like, they got to spread it out a little bit. But I do think when the big AAAs are happening in fewer numbers, and like indies, I honestly think they're getting more traction in the industry. I do. I think they're getting more trust from gamers because you have games like Death's Door that sold like gangbusters. You had Cult of the Lamb recently that came out and sort of took the world by storm. Huge commercial success, massive numbers for them. And
Valheim last year.
Valheim, Tunic. There's a lot of games that have seen massive commercial success with really small teams. And I think gamers are starting to say, what? There's not really a reason to be anti-indie. Like, today I had a couple people kind of poo-pooing us doing the Awesome Indies showcase. Is there like, ooh, indies gross? It's like, I don't know, man. They're kind of kicking the crap out of the AAAs right now. They're showing up more often. They're proving you can make stellar games with small teams. Tymesia just recently came out. Wonderful Souls game, small team indie game, and very excellent. And I don't know. I think we're getting. It's almost like a market equilibrium that is happening, and this is where my confidence in gaming is still well in place. In that, seems to be a lot of hungry devs, a lot of hungry companies willing to make excellence, and then they get noticed, and then that's hopefully then when the money and the sequels can improve. But I think gaming does have a bright future. I just don't think it's going to look like it traditionally did, where you have all the big tentpoles every year: Call of Duty, Assassin's Creed, FIFA, Madden, and then everybody else is like trying to pick up table scraps. I do feel like it's getting spread out a little bit more.
Yeah, I wonder how games as a service will impact some of these tentpole games, especially like when you talk about like FIFA and Madden, things like that. It's like, why aren't those just a service-based game anyway? Like, you're just reselling the same
roster
game.
update. Yeah,
you're selling a roster update every year. So I wonder how like that might impact overall kind of these tentpoles and in terms of it. And it'll be interesting to see, because we know Sony's making moves. Sony wants to have many of these kind of service-based games. And maybe we just kind of enter into that era, or maybe even nightmare, for depending on your worldview, for the game itself. But it's going to be interesting. Like, I'm not worried actually about the future, because as long as you have passion and people who want to pour that in, like, I think the fact that the indies are being so successful, it in a way, like, it kind of makes sense, because all of a sudden when you start having to make a team of 500 600 people, like, there's so much extra coordination and extra time that's needed, and it's hard, like, especially over the course of years and years, where like an indie team, it's like, oh yeah, let's talk about it. Oh, that sounds fun. Okay, let's do it. And we don't have to worry about, going through like some kind of established lore. Like, I've often said that I like, when I've seen the problems with World of Warcraft, it's like, when you listen to the devs, like, they want to make a good game, but it's like, it feels like they're stuck in all this arbitration and all this, like, somebody made a decision 15 years ago, and that's why we're struggling to kind of try to get this thing made, right? So it's like with an indie, it's like, yeah, like, there's no expectation. That's one of the things. Like, you look at the struggles with Halo. Like I was remember getting in an argument on Twitter. Like, somebody was like, no, Halo's got to go back to its roots. It's like, yes and no. Like, we cannot sit here and say that you can release Halo 1 or Halo 2 today just with updated graphics and expect it to perform. It's like, there are things that you have to account in, that the market's changed, expectations have changed. How do you adapt while at the same time trying to remain true, right? But you can come out with Splitgate and there's no, like, nostalgic history of like, that's not a part of this game. That's like, what are they doing? So like, there's also that level of freedom outside of the size and scale, and in a way, agility that an indie company can bring to a game, where they can find the fun and then they can lean into that. And there's not this expectation that this game is going to be the game, to end all games for people.
I said yesterday on my podcast, I said that I think Embracer Group buying up all these other companies. I kind of gave the analogy. I feel like they're like the minor leagues to the bigger companies. Like they're buying up all these little small indie devs, right? And then there's other bigger devs as well, but they're buying them up, and I feel like it's like an incubator. They're gonna let them make their games and do what they want, and then all of a sudden, like Microsoft, the big leagues, Sony, Microsoft. Amazon's the expansion team that's coming into the major leagues. They're looking to pick up people, and they're going to pick, and Embracer Group will just sell those off because they have so many companies. I read the thing, it was like 120 companies with 230 games in the development with 850 IPs, and it's just like, holy Christ, that's a lot of games coming out of one umbrella, right? And then their first AAA game since they bought them is Saints Row, and it just rock bottoms. It completely ruins their stock.
Yeah, Saints Row. I had people saying they felt bad. I'm like, why? Why do you feel bad for Saints Row?
I don't feel bad.
Like, they knew the game was bad, and they launched it anyway. And the funny thing was, people were concerned about that game from super early on. I don't know. I think it's a cautionary tale. These games that it's like they want to change the fabric of the game, and it's like, well, who are you making that for? Like, what are you doing? Like,
right.
We've always talked about that, right? With an established franchise, the minute you decide to completely reinvent it, you're taking a massive risk because you're hoping you're going to get all these new people that care when your loyalists are going to clearly be annoyed by the way that game was received. It just did not do well. A day after launch, it was eviscerated and sort of over.
I knew that game was going to be a trash fire the first frame I saw of it months ago. I was like, yeah, no. Or a year ago. I was like, yeah, no, I'm staying away from that. That, Skull and Bones. And now with the delay of Starfield, I'm a little worried about Starfield. I know a lot of people are not. They're going to say it's going to be a great game, but I'm a little worried about Starfield.
You know what I'm worried about with Starfield? I think that Bethesda is going to be blamed for stuff that is out of their control. Like, I honestly believe at this point in time that game is going to get pretty bad press. I think it's going to run really poor on the Series S, and I think it's going to have performance issues and bugs, and I think a lot of that's going to have to do with the acquisition. I think that game, everything about that game, something's off, something's weird, there's something going on underneath the surface, and I think it adds a lot of credence to the fact that, there were rumors it was going to be a timed exclusive for the PS5. If that's true, then the acquisition of Bethesda put that game on a really, really bad path, and everyone's going to say it's their fault. It's Bethesda's fault. Bugthesda. They won't look at Microsoft. They won't look at the inferior nature of the Series S. It'll all be Bethesda's fault. Like, if you try to talk about Halo,
right.
and you get people to concede it's bad, they just blame 343. It has nothing to do with Microsoft and their contract policies and how that really hurt 343's ability to create a game. It's I don't know. I told people today, I was like, you got to take your fandom hat off, and you got to think about things from other angles here. And I am more worried about Starfield because of the acquisition and what it probably did to their efficiency and their bandwidth and their plans.
Sure. Yeah. The problem I see with Starfield is that I read an article last week or 2 weeks ago. Like, the diehard fans are the modders, right? Modders love Bethesda because they get to make the game better, right?
Yeah, and they do.
Right. And the modders literally had a report that they had a roadmap already. They're like, we're ready for Starfield to come out and fix all the problems with it. They are the fans of the game, and they already know that game's going to have way more bugs and problems because they know Bethesda, and they're banking on it. They're like, well, we're going to cover them. And it's just funny to me because that's what you have to, right? As a fan of Bethesda, you have to wait for the modders to fix the game faster than the actual developers do when they release it. It's
unfortunate they can't like
come
out beforehand.
Yeah.
Like, all right,
they don't want to pay them. They don't want to pay them.
Well, and I mean, I was going to type to Cujo. I'll just say something to Cujo. He says they've owned Bethesda for a year. If Starfield's a mess, it's on Bethesda. Yes, he already primed and ready to be like, it's all Bethesda's fault. Imagine a 4, 5, maybe 6 year project getting purchased when you're in your final year. You're on the runway. You're ready to deliver the product, and it's going to be a PS5 timed exclusive. Let's just imagine that that's true. That's what Starfield had its sights set on. Imagine getting purchased in that final year and being like, we have to completely change where this game lands, and we have to optimize it for a system we were never even considering. How many systems did they build? How many graphical ideas did they have that were never, ever considering the Series S? Like, blaming Bethesda for that is just, it's laughable.
It works both ways, though, Lorna. Remember, I know it's an off topic here, but Destiny did the same thing. Anytime Destiny did anything wrong, Bungie never got the blame for anything. It was always, well, it's Activision.
Activision,
It was because of Microsoft before they made it, and then it was Activision's problem, and then when they went on their own, they're like, well, Activision holds the cards here still, and then now Sony owns them, and Sony will probably get the blame for the new stuff that comes out it works both ways, right? It's just the fans. If you talk bad about Sony, the Xbox fans get on your balls, and if the Xbox, it's vice versa. It's the same thing, right? The people will get on and say, well, it's Bethesda's fault, and the other same people go, oh, well, it's the other company's fault, not Bungie's fault. You can't win. You can't win with these kind of conversations. It's always that way.
Well, and to be clear, I'm not preemptively defending Bethesda. Like, I'm sure the engine is part of the problem. They insist on using Creation Engine, which there's good and bad that comes with the Creation Engine. It's very moddable. Modders talk about why they think, it makes sense to continue using it. It's a very good engine. So I'm not going to sit here and act like some of the problems that we see in Starfield when it launches, that none of that's Bethesda's fault. But everything that's happening right now, man, where there is smoke, there is fire. Something is wrong. Something's wrong. And that, to me, to have all the hype, all the build-up, they had all that stuff recorded, all this talk, the date set in ink, and then all of a sudden now we've got a delay. You pull out of Gamescom, we're not hearing anything, we're not seeing anything. Even the gameplay they debuted had performance issues in the actual debut video, which is staggering to me. I don't know if I've ever, in all the years I've covered reveals, watched a video and been like, there's pop-in the video, there's performance issues. Other than Sonic Frontiers, that might have been one of the first games I ever covered where this is your debut gameplay and there's pop-in the dadgum video. What the frick is going on? Like, you can fully render everything and hide all the rough edges. Like, what are y'all doing? And here comes Starfield. They did the same thing. This isn't me being a hater. It's like, this is concerning. Like, what in the world's going on with this game? Because I want the game to be awesome. I've been excited about this game from moment one.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. We're all kind of rooting for it. Like, we want it to be good. And I hope that the extra time that they're given pans out, right? Like, that's all we can hope for. But game making at this scale, man, like, anything can go wrong. There's going to be, there's always going to be things that can throw a wrench into it. And so it's going to be, it's going to be interesting to see if they land it and they stick the landing, people are going to come off and, the Xbox fans are going to be like, see, this was absolutely right. And then if it doesn't, make sense. One of the things when Xbox was, acquiring, Bethesda, all of a sudden, it's like I saw so many Sony fans that were like, oh yeah, all those games suck anyway. Right. And it's like, oh yeah, you go look at your history. It's like, you've got so many achievements and you're like, it's like, all right, I don't care. I just wanted to be, I hope it's a good game. I'm, it's on Game Pass. So like, it cost me, already what it cost me. I think it actually is going to cost them more because I'm sure that's going to cut into Game Pass sales and resubs and stuff like that for the holiday window that they missed.
That reminds me of like being in high school and you're like, oh man, I really like that girl. And the girl's like, oh, I heard she's bad. Yeah, I didn't really like her anyway. Right. That's how it feels like when.
Yeah.
Well, and that's so on the nose because if Starfield is amazing and gets tons of great reviews, all these guys that have been getting on my nose, they're going to be like, see, what a win for Xbox. They're not going to say jack squat about Bethesda. They're not going to celebrate Bethesda. Right. They're not going to talk about how great a developer Bethesda is. Yeah. It's going to be a win for Xbox. But if this game sucks balls and runs like trash on the Series S, well, that's all Bethesda's fault. That's on Bethesda.
Times the trash, right?
Yeah, it's I don't know. I find the whole thing tiring because it's like, I just want games to be good, and when they're bad, I want to figure out what the frick happened. Like Cyberpunk, I'm not interested in calling them liars and frauds. I want to figure out what happened. I don't care. I'm like, I don't have an allegiance here. People say I hate on Cyberpunk. What do you mean? Cyberpunk's on every platform. That game is bad and incredibly disappointing, and they're going to quietly kill it. Right now, it's happening. Final DLC, no more. They're just going to let it drift off into the sunset, and then they're going to start hyping up Witcher 4, because I think they're going to bring Cyberpunk back. as a different property, ported or whatever. Like, I think they're going to build either a new Cyberpunk game or something on the Unreal Engine, and they're going to let the Red Engine version die. It's just like, goodbye, good riddance to that game. And Witcher 4 will be how they buy their time to do it, I think.
I would be lying as a content creator, right? Like, I'm a gamer, and I don't want any game to suck. I don't. But as a content creator, when I talk about and I see a game that's going to looks like it's bad, I want that game to be bad because it make me right. Because I was like, that looks bad, and I want to talk more about it. Why it's bad, right? I don't want to say it's bad because I want it to be bad. I want the games to be good. I want all games to be good because I want to play those games. But then I look at them, I'm like, yeah, this is a bad game. This is a bad game. I told you it was going to be a bad game. Skull and Bone, it's going to be a bad game. Don't play it.
The amount of people who just tried to dunk on me for Cyberpunk, and I was like, hey, guys. And my thing is like, guys, this isn't good, and it's life, and life will go on. It will be okay.
Right.
And the people who hadn't played it yet, like, you're just a hater. And I'm like, no, like I'm not. I want this to be a good game, but y'all have made it so that like it's like in a way like I'm challenging almost like you're the core of who you are. Like I'm insulting you. Like no. You got to disconnect yourself from this belief in this one game. But it's like I actually should probably go back and read those comments for a video because it would probably be so funny. Because I was like, I'm not being somebody who's just hating on this. Like,
right, you're telling facts of actually what's right. Going on with you.
Hey guys, the sky's blue. You're a moron.
Yeah, I find that people try to put you into the narrow thought patterns and the narrow categories that they use. Like that's how they view everything. They view everything through the lens of fanboyism, hater, or fanboy like, and so they just expect you to be in that category. And it's like, brother, I have every possible platform. I want every game to be amazing because I love playing video games. I don't relish in a game being bad. I don't get excited. Like when I told people that I felt like Hogwarts was going to get delayed, it was just a gut instinct and it got delayed. That didn't make me happy. Obviously I was like, well, got another one right. But I wasn't like, yeah, I got another one right. I was like,
exactly
this
right.
sucks.
Exactly.
Like, I was like, Hogwarts was going to be perfect for Christmas. Dadgummit. I hate being right about this kind of stuff sometimes.
Yeah.
Somebody told me not to get too excited. I was just telling what I was seeing on screen. I was like, oh, the dark arts. I was like, that seems really interesting and stuff. And they're like, seems like you're really overhyping this game. And I'm like, what do you want me to do? I was like, I'm talking about the game. Do you want me to talk monotone and be like, this game looks really great?
Yeah.
Can't wait. Sometimes that works for some YouTubers. Right. Some YouTubers are like, hello, today we're going to be looking at.
I'm just talking about the game.
Yeah, you should start a channel. Start a channel called The Comatose Gamer and just literally be like, just absolutely monotone the whole time.
All right, guys, we're taking a look at the MMO today. Ashes of Creation. Let's take a look.
You'll accidentally blow up in the ASMR category. They'll be like, this guy's got a great voice. This is very nice.
I hope that you guys are having so much fun.
Yeah.
or I hope that you're not having fun, whichever. Like, just be totally neutral all the time.
I don't want to offend anybody. I just want to make sure everyone's on the same page. That's all.
I hope personally that you are both happy and devastated by the words that are coming out of my mouth.
I try to see the good in it. I mean, it means people are passionate, and that's good for us. Like, if we want to create content, if we want to be in this world and have it be working, we want people to be this diehard. We want people to be this emotional. It can be a little exhausting. But I try to see the good in it, and I think there's a couple of things maybe we could talk about in the after show because a lot of passion's already. Let's actually save this for the after show. I'm gonna whet everybody's appetite. I'm gonna really try to make you want to spend some money on my channel. I want to talk about the PS5 price hike with you guys. I want to talk about that.
All right.
But we're kicking that to the after show. So before we go to the after show,
monotone voices though. Monotone.
Yeah. Yeah. I really hope not. I really hope we don't do the monotone voice.
Did you already buy a PlayStation 5?
So excited about the PlayStation.
Sucks to be you.
I start to feel like I'm in a Doctor Who episode. Like I don't know how to. It's like I've interacting with aliens. While I'm getting the after show set up, why don't you guys tell them about your content, where they can find you? Mike, where's the best place to find your content?
You can find me on youtube.com/30 and still gaming. I hope I'm not too excited about this. You can find me Monday through Thursday from 10 o'clock in the morning till noon Eastern. I have a schedule change for the daily grind. We go over news stories and have conversations. And then nighttime, Monday through Thursday, 8 o'clock, we do 30 plays and we play different games and whatnot. And we also do a podcast on Thursday nights called Generation X Gaming, which is a weekly podcast that goes over a few of the top stories from the past week, and we rant along the way. Join me and Sarge on Mondays. We're at 324 episodes now. So,
and Ginger, what do you got?
Come over to Ginger Prime, hang out there. I've got links to all of my channels, so I like to cover MMORPGs. So I have a kind of Final Fantasy 14 focused channel, a New World focused channel, a Blue Protocol focused channel, and then over on Prime, I'm talking right now a lot about multiverses, kind of debating if I want to start putting out some character guides and things like that. Really enjoying that. Stepping back, obviously, into the new season of Destiny as well. That's a game that I like to just tiptoe into every now and then, and just wait till the next expansion for Lightfall. So that's going to be really cool. And that's the best place. And if you are ever interested in hanging out Friday nights over on Twitch, you can be in Discord. You don't even have to go over to Purple if you don't want to support them. But I stream pretty much from 4 p.m. Central until I'm tired, and we play New World as a community. So come hang out in Discord. You don't even have to be on our server. We just like to sit here talk, and I like to practice my stand-up comedy, which actually is going real well. So I just actually was featured on a showcase just yesterday. Nice. Killed it, and so I'm really enjoying being actually a working stand-up comic. So that's fun. So yeah, come hang out. You might hear some dirty jokes. I don't know.
That's awesome. Guys, if you're in the chat right now, you might have a chance to get into the after show. Sven has gifted some memberships. Click on those in chat and say allow gifts. We'll give you a few minutes to snag those. It is a little bit slower. YouTube changed something with gifted, so they take a little bit longer. Sometimes they actually get emailed to extremely loyal viewers. So the more you're here, the more you watch, the greater chance you can get those. Don't forget, here on Reforge Gaming, we do members content all the time. We're about to go to members only content, but tonight, Friday night, is community game night. We're going to be playing Jackbox, and you do not need to install it. You can play on anything. You just need access to a web browser. So make sure you're here tonight. If you are a member, get in the Discord. There's links below in the description of all of our streams to get into the Discord. YouTube is not so hot about telling you about members-only content, so that's why the Discord's a great choice. So I'm going to put a link in chat as well if you want to come with us. If you're listening to the audio version of this podcast elsewhere, that obviously is coming to a close, you can catch us Fridays at 2 p.m. Eastern, Reforge Gaming on YouTube. We appreciate all the support of the channel. And if you want to become a member on the channel, you can watch this after show that I'm going to start right now. Hey, it's the after show of the Roundtable, and we got a spicy one for you. I want to talk about the PS5 price hike with these guys. We didn't include it in the Roundtable because it would have been too many subjects for one show. We don't want to do that like almost smorgasbord. We did a little bit of a free-for-all at the end of that episode, so if you want to go watch the latest episode of the Reforge Roundtable where we discussed exclusives, delays, game quality, MMOs. What is Amazon Gaming doing? There was a lot there between myself, Ginger, and 30, so make sure and check that out. I am going to end the previous stream and bring everybody over through Redirect that is a member into the members-only Reforge Roundtable after show, and then we'll be able to get started with this discussion.